The end of the Tatum-Brown era? What if the unthinkable is actually the right path for Boston? What if the biggest mistake of the Celtics' next decade isn't a bad signing, a failed draft pick, or an injury, but not trading Jaylen Brown right? Now? Sounds like blasphemy, right? A slap in the face of the emotional Bond fans have with the duo that finally delivered Banner 18 to Boston. But with Tatum facing a devastating injury and the brutal math of the salary cap looming large, maybe the boldest and most strategic move is to walk away from the $285 million contract tied to number 7 and hit the reset button. But is anyone truly ready to face that idea? Trading Jaylen Brown is a sin, or is it a vision of the future? Jaylen Brown is by far the second biggest name in the franchise today. NBA Finals MVP, All-Star, elite defender, and a symbol of the team's culture since 2016. On paper, there's absolutely no reason to trade him. And that's precisely the problem. On paper. In reality, Brown is about to enter the second year of a contract that's quickly becoming one of the most financially restrictive deals in the league. He's not the team's primary playmaker. He's not the vocal leader in the locker room. And with Tatum sidelined indefinitely, who's to say Boston wouldn't collapse even with Brown still on the court? The uncomfortable question is, can Jaylen Brown keep the Celtics relevant on his own? If the answer is no, then why not cash in on his market value now?
Obviously, you've been Jayson's teammate for 8 years, and things go down like that. It's going through your head now. How do you kind of digest this?
It's tough. It's not really a lot to say.
While it's at its peak and speed up an inevitable rebuild, trading a Finals MVP sounds irrational, right? Or are we simply trapped in a romantic idea of recent success? Jaylen Brown was monumental in the 2024 NBA Finals. His suffocating defense on Luka, Doncic, his relentless two-way energy, his emotional commitment, they were all crucial to the championship. But that was a moment, a peak, not a guarantee of repetition. Here's the deal. Brown's contract, projected to surpass $300 million, demands that he be more than just a high-level sidekick. He needs to be a primary engine. He must create plays, lead emotionally, carry the load on Tatumless nights. And so far, despite his undeniable talent, he still seems to shine brightest when he's playing next to a superstar, not as the superstar. And now we hit the most controversial debate. What's more valuable, a victorious past or a flexible future? Keeping Brown means preserving identity, but it also means locking up the franchise's financial flexibility for years. Trading him sacrifices immediate stability, but it opens doors. Bold draft picks, promising young talent, cap space to build around Tatum, or even the start of a full-scale era transition. It might sound insane to even suggest moving a guy who just won Finals MVP, but think about names like Chauncey Billups, Paul George, DeMar DeRozan, franchise icons traded at their peak, and in many cases, those trades elevated their teams to new heights. What no one saw coming was that winning organizations could choose to turn the page. Yet sometimes, that kind of courage is what separates sustained success from slow decline. And here's the other question. Has Jaylen already peaked? Was the version we saw in the finals his absolute ceiling, one he can only reach under very specific circumstances? Looking at it coldly, Brown still shows inconsistency in key games. He struggles as a ball handler under pressure, makes costly mistakes in transition, and sometimes disappears when the team needs a leader most. So, what if 2024 was the outlier, not the standard? What's stopping him from regressing into a high-paid, unstable secondary option? It's a painful thought, but maybe the Celtics' biggest challenge going forward isn't about adding talent. Maybe it's about making the gutsiest decision no one wants to consider. Hold on to glory, or bet on what's next? Enter Danny Ainge. The architect behind the current Celtics foundation now finds himself in Utah, surrounded by draft picks, but without a true star to build around. After watching his tanking strategy collapse in the lottery, falling to the 5th pick in what felt like karmic punishment, Ainge may be ready to pivot. And who better to lead that change than a player he personally drafted? Jaylen Brown on the Utah Jazz. Have you imagined it? Teamed up with Lauri Markkanen, supported by cap space and rising young talent, Brown could finally become the guy for a franchise on the rise. Free from Tatum's shadow, a fresh start, a new identity, and a Western Conference no longer monopolized by just 2 or 3 super teams. But the impact of a move like this goes far beyond simple on-court fit. It would be symbolic, a seismic shift. One of the league's most respected players, with a championship pedigree, handed to an executive who understands him as few others do. Ainge knows Jaylen, his drive, his work ethic, his complexity beyond basketball. This wouldn't just be a bet on talent. It would be a bet on leadership potential, on someone who, unshackled from dominant figures like Tatum, might finally become the superstar many have long believed is hidden inside him. Brown to the Jazz wouldn't just be a change of scenery, it would be a shot at building his own legacy. Question is he ready for that? And more importantly, is Boston ready to let him go? For the Celtics, this trade could open the road to the future. 3 first-round picks in 2025, in a draft class many scouts consider rich with talent, could be a goldmine for Brad Stevens. With his proven ability to find complementary pieces and craft balanced rosters, this new capital wouldn't signal a full rebuild, but rather a surgical retooling. Add to that names like Drew Holiday, Derek White, and Peyton Pritchard, players who can keep the system competitive. Sure, the team would lose star power, but it might gain cohesion, flexibility, and less emotional dependency on a roster built around egos and max contracts. But here's the emotional blow. Could fans actually stomach this kind of rupture? Jaylen is beloved in Boston. He's the bridge between generations, the guy who stayed, the one who believed in the process, who, alongside Tatum, brought the team back to glory after years of heartbreak. Trading Brown now doesn't just mean letting go of a player, it means letting go of a story. A loyalty narrative that's becoming increasingly rare in today's NBA. And this is where the most uncomfortable opinion of all emerges. Maybe that's exactly why the trade needs to happen. Maybe the Celtics need that cold detachment, that surgical separation of emotion from logic. Ainge once made that kind of cut when he traded Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, and it launched the Tatum-Brown era. Now, in a twist of fate, it could be the same Ainge, this time sitting across the table, who triggers the next great transition. What no one expected was that history might repeat itself from the other side. But isn't rebuilding around an injured player risky? Yes, it's risky. And that sentence, often whispered by analysts and fans alike, carries a brutal dose of reality that few want to confront. The scenario is uncomfortable because it forces us to face what most supporters try to avoid. Time moves on, bodies wear down, and not every comeback is glorious. But what's truly riskier, betting that Jayson Tatum will return exactly as he was before, with the same explosiveness, the same ability to create separation, to defend quicker wings, and to lead in clutch moments. Or starting right now, to build something that supports him with less pressure and greater chances of collective success. Rebuilding around a healthy Tatum is a beautiful idea, but rebuilding around a post-injury Tatum might be the only smart one. This isn't about abandoning the present, it's about protecting the future, and if that means letting go of Jaylen Brown now, at the peak of his market value, then maybe it's the most rational decision, even if it's wildly unpopular. And here comes a question no one dares to ask. What if Tatum is never the same again? That's the question haunting the halls of Boston, whispered behind closed doors, ignored by many because it's too painful and too real. An Achilles tendon injury isn't a sprained ankle, it's not a pulled muscle. It's one of the worst diagnoses imaginable for a player who relies on mobility and explosion. Michael. Red lost his explosiveness. DeMarcus Cousins became a shell of himself. Wesley Matthews, once a respected defender, never regained his lateral quickness. And those are just the big-name examples. Yes, medicine has advanced, but the mental toll, the fear of re-tearing, the distrust in one's own body, those things still have no guaranteed cure. Tatum may return to playing, But will he ever return to being himself? And more importantly, should the Celtics structure their entire future around an idealized version of him? Because if that version never shows up, the franchise could sink trying to recreate a past that simply isn't coming back. Holding onto Brown out of loyalty or nostalgia might be the very anchor that drags the franchise down. It's a brutal statement, but one that must be said. Jaylen Brown is a fan favorite, a champion, a finals MVP, but he's also a player with soaring market value, entering the second year of a massive contract that will limit the team's flexibility for multiple seasons. Instead of being the savior, he could become the restrictor. And the biggest mistake a winning franchise can make is clinging to the past out of fear of risking the future. The future has already started, and no one wants to admit it. Maybe that's the most painful truth of all. Tatum's injury isn't just a setback, it's a turning point. It forces Boston to make hard decisions. And perhaps the most unpopular one, trading Jaylen Brown, is paradoxically the most sensible. Even worse, ignoring it might be the real risk. Pretending nothing has changed, hoping that Brown and an uncertain Tatum can carry the weight. In an Eastern Conference that's only getting stronger, younger, and deeper. That's a fantasy. The league is evolving. Boston needs to evolve with it, or it will be left behind.